I wanted to talk about the central characters. The two main characters are Danny Wagner and Marissa Miller. Jessica Wagner and then Miss Froy also make appearances, and then there's several side characters. Speak about the two mains, Danny Wagner and Marissa Miller.
Well, the whole place started from a series of dreams I had. One of them was this young girl that I work with, and just having this sort of sitcom situation where, oh, you wake up and you're in bed with someone, and oh, did they have sex? Did they not have sex? Usually that kind of scene is played for last. Here, the two characters are not necessarily naked. They're just sort of, I guess, in sleeping undergarments or whatnot. But they're in a very, I guess you'd call it the Samuel Beckett-like scene where the bed seems to almost be just sort of floating in nothingness, blackness. Occasionally, some people pop in who have little brief vignettes where they seem to not know certain things. It's basically about Danny tripping back through his memories, and how the Marissa character is a good foil for him, because I guess she is younger than Jessica would be, and a little less sarcastic and a little bit more open to listening to whatever stuff Danny is talking about. And so it provides a nice entree. And this is kind of play where you could say, well, it's not really about anything specifically, but it's about everything, the human dilemma, and characters go missing. Eventually, by the end of the play, Danny Wagner is missing in the last bit of the play, and the other characters are asking where he is. And that goes back to the Hitchcock film and Miss Froy from The Lady Vanishes.
Oh, and I asked you last time what you thought of The Lady Vanishes. Could you recapitulate your opinion on it, and then on Hitchcock in general, his English versus his American films?
Well, it's a good film. It's Hitchcock's English films of the 30s, his early talkie films, generally were better than his Hollywood stuff. The Hollywood stuff, if the Hollywood stuff was set in a limited area like Rope or like Lifeboat or Dial M for Murder or those kind of things, or it was so outside the bounds of what was being done, like Psycho with birds, his stuff tended to work. When he did straightforward stuff like The Vertigos, like Spellbound, which is not a good film at all, or like Rear Window, his stuff tended to tank. And this, in my mind, The Lady Vanishes, which is about a female British spy who disappears on a train, and her young female companion that she meets at a hotel in some unnamed Central European country knows that she's met Miss Froy. She disappears, and then she spends most of the play trying to find her with the character who's eventually her love interest, and they prove the conspiracy, and everything works out. But I put it on. It is to Hitchcock what Stagecoach is to John Ford. And if you've ever seen Stagecoach, that's the debut, the big feature film debut of John Wayne. It's one of Ford's best films, and it's a film that's also based on a play, which I think The Lady Vanishes was based on a book, which then became a play, which then became the film. And that's another thing. The stuff that Hitchcock did that other people had written and had success with tend to be his best works too. Hitchcock was someone that if you put him within a certain framework, limits, he could deliver because he knew what was expected of him. When he was allowed to let his own mind roam, he got stereotypical, he got dull, he got predictable, which is why I think we mentioned how his 22, 25-minute little episodes of his television show tended to be better overall. I think there was a higher overall quality in the however many 250, 300 episodes he did of that versus the
because there's that famous episode that begins Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I think it's called Savage, where it ends up in a murder and the woman IDs a man, and then you realize that she's experienced some sort of trauma where she's IDing every man, and there's no Freudian shit attached to it. It's just a simple, succinct tale with a very haunting ending. But in his other films, even his really good films like Psycho, he tends to have scenes like the therapist scene in Psycho that are just there for psychobabble than any sort of dramatic purpose. I've also tended to see, especially in his films, not necessarily in the television episodes, that his actors, the quality of the actors is usually dictates the quality of Hitchcock's films, except for something like The Birds. I don't necessarily know if Tippi Hedren was all that as an actress, but it was probably the best script Hitchcock has, and the short story it originates from is certainly a great short story. But something like Psycho, if you have Anthony Perkins in the role, it's going to excel regardless of some of the script weaknesses.
Well, yeah, Daphne du Maurier was a very good short story writer who probably could have become a great writer had she not had as much success as she did. Bloch, was it Richard Bloch, or who the hell wrote no, who wrote Psycho? I forget. A guy named Bloch, Bloch, I think, wrote that, and that's a good book. I've actually read that. The original Psycho book, though, Norman Bates, I believe, is a middle-aged man who's balding and fat, and so it's far different than the Anthony Perkins thing. But it gave the framework that a good, strong foundation and framework, and Hitchcock could do things with it. But even the best of Hitchcock's films don't compare, for example, to the two best Clouseau films, Henri Georges Clouseau films, Diabolique, and
do you think,
especially
Psycho 2, just to return back to that point, do you think that the mother element is unnecessary as well? Because I think that the beginning with the Janet Leigh character and then her sort of encroaching on this far more dangerous antagonist is a much more interesting way of getting at it. I don't think the mother part is necessary in the least.
I don't think they should have put the mother part in, but I think it was a good thing to kill off Janet Leigh in the first hour. It's a good trope to have, oh, here's Janet Leigh. By that time, she had spent 12, 15 years as a Hollywood up-and-coming babe, and so she's a big name now. She had married Tony Curtis. She'd gotten divorced. Her name was out there. She's, she's still a very good-looking woman, she's killed off 40, 45 minutes into the thing. At that time, Tony Perkins was a name, but he wasn't a big superstar one, and he never really became a big superstar in actuality. So I think that's a good. But yeah, they could have. But that's one of the problems with Hitchcock, and it's one of the things that's avoided in The Lady Vanishes. The Lady Vanishes isn't Hitchcock trying to be deep. It's a mystery, a thriller. I recently rewatched a really well-made film called And Then There Were None by René Clair, the mid-1940s. I remember as a child when I was 6 or 7 years old. It's basically these 10 people that are brought to this island off England, and they're killed off one by one. It's based on an Agatha Christie book originally called The 10 Little Niggers, then changed to 10 Little Indians. Because every time someone's killed, they kill off a little clay Indian in it, and it's not great or deep cinema, but it was something I remember being 6, 7, 8 years old during the summer, maybe staying up at 11 o'clock to watch it till 12:30, 1 o'clock, feeling like a grown-up staying up late, and I remember thinking, oh, it had a really good ending. And so Jessica and I have been watching a lot of Hollywood films recently, especially Judy Garland musicals. I watched one last night called Pirate with Gene Kelly. And I can understand why the Hollywood formula then worked. I mean, they were exceedingly well-crafted films. You have to say Hollywood musicals are beautifully crafted. The things that they did, the colors, especially if they're Technicolor, the dance numbers are superb. Obviously, it's not, you can't break out into song, and this pirate film was set in the Caribbean, but everyone is white people with tan makeup on and singing in English, even though they're supposed to be Hispanic. But there is a place for it. But Hitchcock made his money and his reputation in Hollywood, but he made his best films in England.